BMW විකුණු පාන විතරක්ම වෙන්නේ නැති ගන්න.
ඕන වාහනයක් ගන්නවා.
පරණ වාහනයක්
ගන්නවා.
පාර්ට්ස් හැම හොයා ගන්න අමාරු කාර් එකක්
ගන්නවා.
සල්ලි ගන්න විකුණනකන් ඉන්න වෙන්නේ.
පැය 3ෙන් සල්ලි දෙනවා.
ලීසින් කරලා තිබුණොත්
ලීස් එක සෙටල් කරලා අපි ගන්නවා.
කොකටත් එක ෂුවර් කරගන්න හැබැයි.
අපෙන් නොගත්තත් අපි ගන්නවා.
As volatility and uncertainty is ravaging through our economy, how well informed are you on the latest developments in the business and economic landscape of Sri Lanka? Welcome to your weekend's most insightful and profitable 60 minutes. This is Bisnomics. I'm Tharandu. According to the United Nations Human Rights related articles and conventions, it is clearly stated that access to the best possible health care and medication is one of the most important human rights. Given all these developments and the news we hear about shortages, lack of access to medicine and healthcare facilities and so on, what is the current status of our healthcare industry in Sri Lanka? And most importantly, do we have access to the right level of medicines? This will be our focus today on Bisnomics. And joining me is a veteran in the field of pharmaceuticals who is none other than Mr. Shantha Bandara, CEO of Sunshine Healthcare's Pharmaceutical Division. Shantha, absolute pleasure to have you and welcome to Bisnomics.
Thank you, Tarandu. Thank you for having me.
Shantha, let's talk about this heavily debated point on the total import bill of medicine for Sri Lanka. Because yes, we hear about certain organizations that are manufacturing medicines in Sri Lanka, but we also hear that there's a lot of imports that take place as well. You'll know about this better than I do because you're someone with the front row seats to the whole action in the pharma industry. Let's break it down. What is our total import bill? And let's look at it as a percentage of consumption and most importantly, the breakdown for what are we spending and in what areas. Let's start with that.
Yes, Tarandu. I think overall, if you look at the requirement of medicine or pharmaceuticals the country needs, it comes to about an annual value of about 130 billion plus, that is in rupees, right? Out of which 80% of the requirement is imported to the country. And balance.
And I believe this is one of the highest in the region.
Yes, it is. And as a country of size, this requirement has been growing year on year, and there has been volume increase in the pharmaceutical requirement.
And I also believe that due to the good healthcare systems we have in this country, we do have a longer life expectancy in the country as well. And when that happens, the demand for medication grows even more.
That is true. That is very true. And we are lucky to have a system in the government that, any citizen is able to just walk into a government hospital and get treated, irrespective from where you are in the country.
It's a luxury we more often
I think it's an absolute luxury. And also, you are able to be treated and be well and get out from the hospital, right? And there is no single cent that you need to pay. However, coming back to the values, right? In terms of values, I think about 30 billion is been domestically produced. So there is local manufacturing happening. SPC, and also private sector has come in with the government drive towards promoting local manufacturing, pharma manufacturing. There are investors and companies have come into Sri Lanka, and also locals have invested heavily in equipment in making pharmaceuticals locally. That is about 20% of the requirement, and about 100 billion plus is being imported back into the country by way of different pharmaceuticals and treatment for ailments that people are going through. And in terms of local manufacturing, again, most of the packing material and all of API, the active pharma ingredients, are again imported back from outside Sri Lanka. So there is quite a bit of imports being done, and it's quite import based industry when it comes to pharmaceutical availability and requirement in the country.
Understood. That's a very good opening you gave to that whole discussion there, Shantha. Let's talk about the impact of the triple crisis, because our economy is right now facing what we can all recognize as the perfect storm. We get the fuel crisis, the dollar crisis, and then the energy crisis, and we don't know what other crisis will pop up tomorrow. Hopefully nothing, but we never know. And amidst all these developments, especially among these, like from these three crises, what is the main impact that you, as a player in the pharma sector, that you are facing right now?
Yeah, you correctly set the grounds there. I think the first biggest issue right now faced by any pharmaceutical company, whether they are importing or whether they are producing, is the crunch in dollar. The dollar is not easily available right now. Sri Lanka is going through a problem in their dollar reserves, and that has impacted the industry directly. So therefore, importing has become a challenge
I
for
think, Shantha,
anybody.
the word problem might be a little bit of understatement, isn't it? I think it's more like a disaster in terms of our forex
Well,
reserves right now.
Right now it is. Right now it is becoming the single biggest issue where the importers or importing API, that is active pharma ingredients, has become quite challenging. Right now we are unable to open LC. So without LC, we are simply unable to make the supplies available in Sri Lanka. So this is the immediate problem that the industry is facing, other than the ongoing escalation of cost. There is significant inflation happening in the country that is impacting operations of any company for that matter. So pharma companies also facing the same issue that any company would face. So therefore, distribution is a challenge with the significant increase in fuel and also other operational costs, and taking care of the employees and making sure their well-being is going to be a challenge in the coming months.
Do you see a big impact, especially from the supply chain side? Because we all know that the shipping costs, logistic costs are through the roof right now. And I believe that when you are importing medicines, pharma, I believe there are certain conditions, health and safety conditions, which need to be met as well. It's not like just simply throwing something inside a
So
container.
right now, actually about 6 months back or 5 months back, we were talking of this logistic issue. Getting a container was a huge issue, but it has fallen into the second biggest problem with the dollar issue right now in opening a LC. But as you correctly mentioned, the booking of a container, managing logistics, sourcing it back to Sri Lanka has been quite a challenging task for any importer.
To what extent do you think this demand, which we are falling short by, so about 20% we are able to self-fulfill, or rather 20 to 30%, but the balance we are unable to do so. We did hear several parties saying, no, we are going to manufacture it in Sri Lanka, we are going to be self-sufficient, but I don't think that in any industry for that matter, you can overnight or in a few months become self-sufficient like that. Shantha, the direct question which I am, I would say indirectly asking from you is, do you see a shortage happening now? Is it something new that we are experiencing? From your experience, what do you think about it?
So Tarandu, I think shortages of pharmaceuticals for this, since we are talking pharmaceuticals, medicine specifically, has been there time to time. Certain products have gone out of stock. But with the problems that we are facing and public, the general public panicking, there's panic buying happening.
Correct.
That has actually aggravated the situation. When there's a panic buying, always you will try to purchase more than what is required.
It's just like, it's the same thing like for a bank, isn't it? If all the customers begin to panic and try to go and pull out the deposits, any bank might run into difficulty.
Yes, the same scenario is applied here. The problem, the other that panic buying would come about is that the people who can afford will go ahead and buy 2 to 3 months stocks or more, which puts a poorer patient who needs drugs for a month won't be able to buy this drugs.
Earlier buying on a weekly basis also.
Yes. So therefore, they are unable to purchase because the availability goes down and the supply chain is so tight right now, then this panic buying cannot be immediately supplied for. So therefore, this problem has become bigger by these issues. But there is a problem, as you said. Generally, about 2-3 weeks back, we had 3 to 5% or little bit more than that out of stock happening in different pharmaceutical items.
Categories.
Yes. But right now what has happened is this has increased or will increase in the future, whereas we are stuck here unable to open LCs, and this will impact our supplies expected in June and July. And I think this is the problem that we are facing right now. Other than many other problems, as you alluded to, in terms of logistics, in terms of inflation and operational issues, I think the biggest problem that we are facing right now is the availability of dollar to import medicine to the country.
On this regard, Shantha, with regard to opening of LCs, is there any mechanism where the banks have been requested to give a priority to the healthcare, the pharmaceutical companies? Is there something like that? Is there any discussions between the associations to try and get priority? Because at the end of the day, you need to stay healthy, you need to be free of illnesses to do any economic activity. So is there any case of the pharma sector getting a priority when it comes to LCs? What are your thoughts?
Actually, in the pharmaceutical sector, there are three very active chambers, and also the retailers association who are in the forefront in this issue.
And they have been, especially the pharmaceutical retailers, have been issuing a lot of warnings to the public.
They have been messaging the public.
Correct.
And also the chambers, the three chambers, which is the pharmaceutical chamber and the devices chamber and the manufacturers chamber, all have been actually working with the authorities and messaging, informing the authorities that the need of the hour is to prioritize. And we have been working with the finance ministry and various other authorities for us to get this done. And there is some amount of work being done, but there is more to be done. I think right now, I think there is quite a bit of priority is required for pharmaceuticals for us to make the availability better.
So, Shantha, out of all these medicines, which ones are at the risk of, I would say, running out of stock? Why I'm asking you this is because people are getting lots of messages which is further panicking them. Sometimes they say, okay, the vaccines used for rabies is running out and not available. Then medicines which are used for people with cardiac issues or heart-related illnesses, that is running out. And even we see sometimes doctors putting messages on social media saying that these patients are dying out. So these are naturally creating a lot of panic among the public of this country. Is there any way where we can say that these medicines are at a higher risk of being run out? And some of those medicines that may have been in short supply 2 weeks ago, can we say that some of those have been obtained by now? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think fundamentally I need to explain one thing to answer that question. See, the government also buys separately and the private sector purchases separately from these suppliers.
There is no central inventory as such.
The central inventory in government is different and individual companies may manage their own requirements. So most of the branded products that the private sector has been importing will be also under challenge because of the LC issue that we just discussed, and also the rising dollar.
Correct.
Which has a huge impact on the cost of goods. And the other sector is the government sector, as we all know. So the government sector continues to purchase directly from these suppliers. And some of the products that you mentioned are also which is required in the government sector, right? So therefore, right now, not only the private sector, government sector is also challenged to actually import. So therefore, both the sectors are being challenged to import. Therefore, certain products which are required in the hospitals, in the government hospitals, in the private hospitals, as well as in the general pharmacy that you find in supermarkets plus in the retail, general retail, are going to face challenges in terms of availability. So I can't pinpoint which product that is. In general, there are many products are out of stock. Correct. And may go out of stock if we continue not to import. It is simple mathematics where if we don't import, surely we won't have product here. Correct. Because we are unable to produce, because the production also happens based on raw material, and raw material is 100% imported. So therefore, we are quite vulnerable at this time where the availability is a challenge.
Makes sense. What is the policy of the government of Sri Lanka with regard to managing the pharmaceutical industry? Let's talk about that on the other side of this short break. This is Bisnomics.
AMW එකෙන් අපි ඕන වාහනයක් ගන්නවා.
පොඩ්ඩක් ඉන්න AMW විකුණු පාන විතරක්ම වෙන්නේ නැති ගන්න.
ඕන වාහනයක් ගන්නවා.
පරණ වාහනයක්
ගන්නවා.
අම් බාලකට දූපු වාහනයක් නම්
මයිලේජ් ජෙනුයින් නම් ගන්නවා.
පාට්සෙම හොයාගන්න අමාරු කාර් එකක්
අවුලක් නෑ ගන්නවා.
සෑහෙන්න මොඩිෆයි කරපු එක.
කිසි ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ.
සල්ලි ගන්න විකුණනකන් ඉන්න වෙයිනේ.
පැය 3ෙන් සල්ලි දෙනවා.
එතකොට ලීසින් කරලා තිබුණොත්
ලීස් එක සෙටල් කරලා අපි ගන්නවා.
කොකටත් එක ෂුවර් කරගන්න හැබැයි.
AMW වෙතින් ඕනෑම වාහනයක් කරදරයක් නැතුව විකුණ ගන්න. අපෙන් නොගත්තත් අපි ගන්නවා.
Welcome back to Bisnomics, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. I'm Tharandu Amarasekara. Our focus today is on the pharmaceutical sector of Sri Lanka and the current crisis of medicine shortages that our island is facing. And we are in conversation with Mr. Shantha Bandara. Mr. Bandara, let's talk about the situation with regard to the government policy. Do we have a national policy for managing the medicine and the pharmaceutical needs as well as the pharmaceutical production in Sri Lanka? Is there a government policy? When I say government policy, what we are referring to is a politically independent, long-term plan for this pharma sector of Sri Lanka.
Yes, Tharandu. I think I should explain you the context in terms of the pharmaceutical regulations. In terms of the regulator, the National Medicinal Authority is NMRA, who is the regulator of any pharmaceutical importation as well as production. Therefore,
Even the raw material, etc.
even the raw material. In terms of manufacturing, from the layout of the plant until it is approved with good manufacturing practices, GMP standards being approved by the NMRA, and also until commercial production and releasing the batch, it is being governed by the NMRA, the National Medicinal Regulatory Authority. And also for any importer to import, we have to go through the regulations, because registering the manufacturing site of our manufacturers, the partners outside Sri Lanka, and also registering products comes under the NMRA guidelines. And opening a pharmacy is coming under the National Medicinal Regulatory Authority, and also any physical distribution comes under the authority, and all of this is being governed by the authority. In terms of national policy, I think most of us know that Sri Lanka embarked into a drive in getting national production done of pharmaceuticals, and there have been a drive to open many plants and produce the Sri Lanka requirement, and all this work actually commenced very well in the country. Right now what we are going through are challenges that actually put not only imports, also production into quite a difficult task. I think moving forward in normal conditions, this proportionate of production and import may change. If the national requirement is locally produced, and if there is affordability for our patients, I think that is the path for us to further focus, and our national policy should be that certain products which we are good at to produce nationally and bring about certain products. None of the countries can produce their own products from only from their country. So if you look at our largest partner, that is largest country near to us, India, being the biggest pharmaceutical hub who produces, also may import certain products from other countries. Therefore, we will have always a mix of production, and
Correct.
always will there be imports into the country. So therefore, in normal conditions, I think the production of pharmaceuticals will further improve in the country.
With regard to price controls, now we are aware that the pharmaceutical sector does face certain price controls. The previous government, current government, they have been enforcing certain price controls purely with the welfare of people in mind, of course, but I'm pretty sure it brings about its own challenges to the pharmaceutical sector and players of the pharmaceutical sector. Shantha, what are the main price controls which are there in place? And I also believe that there are certain policies for this and certain, I would say, gazettes related to the price controls as well. What are the main price controls that are there for the pharmaceutical sector right now? And in your view, should any of those price controls be looked into in terms of revisions?
So let me explain the price control scenario and how we have come to this now. is that from 2016, the government or NMRA introduced something called the Gazette of Prices. So, therefore, right now we are at 71 molecules under a gazette, and all the other products which are non-gazetted comes under NMRA price regime. So, therefore, all the products are controlled in terms of price. That means we are in a regulated environment when it comes to pharmaceuticals, which is governed by the respective authority. The 71 molecules which are pharmaceutical molecules are under price gazette, which are prescribed by the government, and time to time the government may increase prices as and when there is increases in the dollar value or the exchange. But the non-control, there have been times that the authority has allowed the private sector to take certain price increases as were required. But this process takes a longer time. What happens is the dollar exchange against rupee increases at a much higher rate than the price increases sometimes the industry can take. This puts the industry in a huge challenge in terms of the cost of the goods. The mere objective of the industry or any pharmaceutical company is to make product available at an affordable price to the patients. So, there are challenges in this when it comes to right now we are facing significant depreciation of rupee, which puts any pharmaceutical company in high difficulty to manage the pharmaceutical cost of goods, and also the cost of operation further makes it challenging for any company to manage.
Understood. Now, in terms of the current funding that our government is receiving, we heard about World Bank and so many other authorities promising to give us certain funding, especially to meet the short-term essentials, the need for short-term essentials, and medicines was one of them. And I also believe we have a credit line from India in this regard as well. Shantha, how do you see these playing into the current situation?
Actually, Thandu, all of this is playing very positively. Right now, we are in need of this, and we are very happy to see that immediate neighbor helping us in this tight condition or tight situation that we are in, and the Indian credit line that has been granted to the country will immensely help, and there is an allocation and there is quite a bit of documentation being done, and we are working with our partners, and most companies are working with the partners, which will help us to import certain products from India, where the largest importing country is India for us. Therefore, this will definitely help us. And various aid coming in, there are a lot of groups helping. Right now, there are a lot of donors in the last 2-3 weeks we have seen helping. Definitely, this will help the country and patients for availability.
And we see that they are opening up to the professionals and the citizens of Sri Lanka who are living, Sri Lankan nationals who are living abroad, the expat community also to donate medicine in whatever way possible. Do you see that having a positive impact as well, Shantha?
Certainly, it's very positive for us, and the problem still we are facing is that with all those donations coming in and pledging donation into this whole situation is very positive anyway. However, the fundamental problem in us importing by opening LC has still not been resolved to the extent that we want it to be resolved. So, therefore, this problem still prevails, while the support is very much appreciated by many who are actually being supported from this donation, and these donations will definitely help the availability in the country.
In terms of the pharma production, as a general comment, Shantha, you know what's happening in the industry. When you look at the pharma production technology available in Sri Lanka, and when you compare it with the rest of the world, can we say that we are somewhat getting to where the rest of the world is in terms of the technologies that are used?
Thalindu, actually, if you look at Sri Lanka, and if you look at some of the leading countries who are manufacturing, of course, there's a lot to learn from these countries.
Many miles to go.
Yes, but we are happy to see that many steps have been taken by the local investors to bring equipment and produce quality drugs in the country, so that we can be one day proud of that we are moving towards self-sufficient in this particular area. So therefore, definitely, if you ask me that whether there is improvement needed, there is improvement can come from our partners. There is tech support coming from our partners, which has helped the industry to improve. So therefore, there is more investment being done, and we see more people getting into investing in equipment, and we are looking at industry which is growing, and one day will support the overall industry in terms of pharmaceutical availability at a quality and at a very affordable price to the patient.
Understood. Some very good points there by you, Shantha. Stay tuned. We will be back after this short break. This is Bisnomics.
අංකල් සැම්සන් එයාගේ කාරක විකුණන්න තීරණය කළා. ඇඩ් එක දැම්ම විතරයි. සට ගාලා කට්ටිය එන්න ගත්තා. හැබැයි සතුටින් හිටපු අංකල් සැම්සන්ට වාහන විකුණන එක එපා වුණා. BMW වෙතින් කරදරයක් නැතුව විකුණ ගන්න. අපෙන් නොගත්තත් අපි ගන්නවා.
Welcome back to Bisnomics. We are in conversation with Mr. Shantha Bandara on the topic of the pharmaceutical sector of Sri Lanka. Shantha, let's talk about the key markets from whom we are importing, and what pressures are we facing from our main supplying markets. You mentioned India to be one, and I also believe that there are so many other countries from which we import, with whom we may not have all these open credit lines and so on. So what are the key markets from which we are importing medicine, and what are the pressures we are facing from them?
Yes, Tandu, I think have to mention that India has been the largest partner in this, where India is basically exporting around almost 50% of the Sri Lanka requirement. So there are different partners, different companies working with Indian giants, which brings in pharmaceuticals to the country. And in the top 10 companies, which contributes to more than 80% of the Sri Lanka requirement, second comes Pakistan, and all the other countries that I am mentioning would contribute 3 to 4% in terms of Sri Lanka requirement. So of course we import from France, Denmark, again Indonesia, Bangladesh, UK, and United States, US, and those are the main few countries that contributes to the Sri Lanka importation requirement. And India continues to be our largest provider in terms of pharmaceutical, India being a global hub in terms of pharmaceutical production and exports. Sri Lanka imports quite a bit, and current Indian line therefore makes a lot of sense for us to
Credit line we have
with them makes a lot of sense for us to utilize in the best optimal way that can help the current crisis, while we talk about other constraints in the industry. So therefore, these are the main countries that help us in the pharmaceutical, and also in terms of API in China, and also some of the other countries including India, that we bring in the APIs to the country.
Shantha, they always say that numbers don't lie. Yes. Now, from your experience in this sector, especially since we are going through economically downtime, and we can define this as an economic crisis in the country, Shantha, are you seeing a scenario or a situation where people are cutting down on their expenditure on healthcare, especially on the purchase of medicines? I'm sure you work with various channel members, you work with the hospitals, you work with the doctors, so you talk to them, you are in conversation. What is the buzz in the market? Are people cutting down spending on their healthcare?
Tarandu, it's a very sensitive area. Medicine or pharmaceuticals, drugs being very important for our Sri Lankan patients. This is an area that is a concern, right? As you know, the dollar has appreciated, or the rupee has depreciated by 70%
Correct.
or plus, right? That puts immense pressure in terms of the cost of goods, right? For anything which is imported, we are talking about pharmaceuticals right now. But any product that is imported which went through a devaluation of rupee in 70% plus, which made a dollar equal rupee was 200 for $1, which is right now at 360, makes the cost of goods very high. That puts a lot of pressure in terms of pricing of pharmaceuticals. And also, any company would go through the increased operational cost. A significant impact in the operational cost with the fuel increases that we spoke about, and all the other overheads coming into this. As you earlier said, it's a perfect storm that we are facing. With this situation, the cost of goods have gone up. The authorities also have helped us to take certain price increases, but all this means that the cost of a product, of any product, to the general public is going to be very expensive. You may have seen increases in the fuel. You may have seen increases in milk powder, bread, and all the other rations that is generally needed to have a normal life. The normal essential good pack has increased. Therefore, pharmaceutical also sits in that. And it will go through the same scenario that any other product would go through. Therefore, this is impacting, because without certain things people can survive, but without medicine people are unable to survive. So, this is a very sensitive scenario that we are looking at. So, and how can you cut down the volumes? How can you cut down the volumes? I am sure certain amount of vitamins and supplements can be cut down, but the essential pharmaceutical items which needed for our diabetes patients, the cardiovascular patients, and many other diseases that you have to, you're on a lifetime treatment on certain products.
Correct.
Right? Therefore,
diabetes
it is diabetes patients, and it is actually a challenging time for people, and people would want to look out for the certain options, but there aren't many for people to go for. So, therefore, there is a pressure. I don't know how the volumes will work out. However, we see with these increased prices in the general market, the volumes may have issues, especially the products that are in terms of supplement and vitamins and all the other things would go through pressure in terms of volumes, but very much essential products will have to be made available at the best prices that the companies can, which to help the patients in the country.
Shantha, we usually do not get politics involved in any discussion where we keep this a strictly business show, but I want to ask you this. Having reached out to the government authorities, so far what has their response been? This is not a question which is criticizing the government per se, but what I would like to know is, from your initial interest, I'm sure you all as the respected corporate citizens of the country from this sector have reached out to the government with certain proposals, certain ideas and so on. How has the response been from the authorities so far?
Yes, important area. We cannot avoid this area in this discussion. I know not only the pharmaceutical importers, the retailers and the manufacturers, all time to time have reached out to the authorities, and they have explained what sort of value chain that we have, what sort of supply chain challenges we are all going through, and how the dollar crunch and the dollar appreciation impacts the industry and the availability of pharmaceuticals, especially that since we are talking about pharmaceuticals today. And there have been positive feedback time to time. We have seen certain amount of price increases granted. Certain things are being made available. However, there is a long way to go in terms of those discussions, where we need to set up a sustainable mechanism for all of us to work. So, therefore, I think the need of a sustainable mechanism for the pharmaceutical industry in terms of managing product and setting proper MRP and understanding the operation is a need of the hour, and this have been discussed at various forums by various stakeholders. So, therefore, there is discussion ongoing. I think we are expecting a certain amount of positive feedback so that the first thing that we need to do right now is to ensure that products are available in the shelves for people to go and buy, because there is a lot of concerns, panic in patients that the products will go out fully. So therefore, this is a serious situation that we are faced with, and we will continue to engage with the authorities so that we set up a sustainable mechanism for all the stakeholders, that the whole value chain works in sync for the patient to benefit. So I think that's the most important thing that we need to do right now, is to get together having patient in mind so that we do the right thing for the patients, for the availability and especially the prices, right? So that's something sensitive that we need to work on.
On a final note, Shantha, your message to the members of the pharma sector. It's a tough time, testing time, tedious time, one might say. What would your message be to them?
I think we continue to think, right, the importance of this industry, because there is quite a bit of patients are vulnerable and they are dependent on this industry. Therefore, I think right now the message per se would be that work hard to make product available at the most possible affordable price, because on a recession or downturn in our economy, if pharmaceuticals also become very expensive than a normal product that you would require in your life, it would be very difficult for patient to manage. So therefore, one is work very hard with the partners, that is the manufacturers that exports, work with them to get the best prices so that locally the prices will be affordable. Work with the authorities to actually set up a mechanism for us to get pharmaceutical availability higher, because certain pharmaceuticals can go out of the market if we don't set it up. So therefore, working hard on these aspects, keeping in our mind that the patient and the patient need for quality drugs at an affordable price is something that we need to think of. And the other thing is handle your operations efficiently, right? Because the cost in your operation has gone up. Everybody is facing this. How innovatively can you manage these operations? So therefore, these two ends are very important, and we have to sustain this industry, and we need to work hard in terms of managing these challenges. We should not give up at this time and sustain the operation and make sure that you make your products available to the patients, which is the most vital thing that we should do in this time. And profit and all this is very important, right? But those will fall second to us. The availability becomes and the affordability becomes first, I think. And I know this is a very hard pill to swallow, and a very hard thing to follow. But we need to work on this, and that is something that I think we all should get together in terms of achieving.
Some very valid final thoughts there from you, Shantha. Wish you all the best with all your future endeavors, and may you be able to contribute to the pharmaceutical sector of this country with even more efficiency and productivity moving forward. We hope that the challenge, for the sake of the country, we hope that the challenges you and the pharma sector is facing will get solved soon, because as I mentioned at the start, access to proper medicine and healthcare is one of the fundamental rights of the Sri Lankans, and we seriously hope that right gets fulfilled. Thank you so much for joining us, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Thanadu. Thank you for having me today.
And with that, we wrap up today's discussion of Bisnomics. No matter what industry you may be in, I wish that you will have a healthy and successful week ahead. I will see you with the next episode.